So I'm always looking out for the hidden beauty and secret art everywhere. So this is Lamb's Conduit Street, walking down towards Emerald Street. I noticed something on the ground. Have a look at this. It says here, great things lie ahead. So what on earth does that mean? Well, it refers to a community project building, Holborn House, and that's part of the artwork. The artist has communicated with the local community, as it were, and got them to say things about the area which have been immortalised, these great things, in this model of the brickwork that used to be on this site, reversed up there and this way around, so you can see it from both sides. And it's talking about connections to the history of the area, what people find important in here, the love that can be shared across the community, and it's a really lovely piece. Imagine being captured by the Japanese in World War II and interned in a prisoner of war camp. This lady here, Daisy Sage, she stole a bedsheet and used coloured threads that she pulled from hospital linen to write a record embroidered with names, places, and even a daily word from a dictionary. They would sew into the fabric just to keep themselves occupied. Life in a Japanese prisoner of war camps must have been absolutely horrendous. Malnourishment, disease, hardships, punishment, and this was kept hidden from them for all those years. 1941, 1942, War 1942, as a tribute to the bravery and persistence and endurance of the human spirit, even in the most extreme conditions. This is the most precious item in the entire collection of the City of London archives, more precious even than their copy of Magna Carta, because it is the scripture, the charter of King William I, William the Conqueror, to the City of London, roughly 1067, a year after the Norman invasion. And he did not conquer the city. He was crowned in Christmas Day 1066. And this charter is the earliest known royal document in Europe that guarantees the collective rights of all, that's all the citizens of a group, not just specific members. And it's got the earliest surviving impression of the seal of the new King of England. And this is what the document says. The first acknowledgement of collective rights of citizens. So I've just arrived at the Savoy Chapel, which is what's called a royal peculiar. It's a chapel like Westminster Abbey that comes directly under the jurisdiction of the monarchy and not the Church of England. And it is, although it's been heavily restored in Victorian times, it is an original Tudor chapel created by King Henry VII on the site of an old hospital. John of Gaunt owned the Savoy Palace that used to be here, and it's absolutely full of royal mementos, including this beautiful stained glass window here, dedicated to the 60th anniversary of the Queen's becoming a Queen, investiture, coronation even. And you can see here the beautiful detail on this. Okay, so George Peabody, famous American philanthropist and World Cup footballer, is commemorated here. He's the man who gave his millions of pounds to create all of the social housing Peabody estates in London. He also founded the JP Morgan dynasty, Morgan Grenfell, the Morgan family, and that's immortalised for the World Cup. Thank you very much. Brilliant. So this is the first ever recorded image of London. It was struck in about the year 296 to celebrate the putting down by the Emperor Diocletian of a rebellion. The British governor, Caragh, had seceded from the Roman Empire and claimed Britain as his own. He then was murdered by his chancellor. And Doesn't happen ever, does it? And he succeeded him, called Electus. But this man Constantius Chlorus was sent in to put down the revolt. He successfully defeated them and saved London. There's even the words London here, describing London. That's the towers of London then. And this coin was struck to celebrate his victory. His son went on to become the Emperor Constantine I, the first Christian emperor. And this coin was struck, minted in Trier rather than here. But the original is in Paris somewhere, but it's been lent a copy here. And this is the very first image ever, history of London. So I'm here on the closing night for 3 years of the Museum of London. And I've come to look at this book. And this is the detail of it, the present state of London, 1681, because I wanted to show off my own copy of the same book, which I bought recently. And you can see here that it opens up to the same page. There you go. So I'll be able to keep a little bit of the Museum of London in my own possession well after the museum closes. It comes from February 1675, and it lists the causes of death within the city of London, including such things as 1 person died of worms, 1 of wind, 4 of phtisic, thrush, teeth, 15 people died of teeth, stopping in the stomach, rupture, rising of the lights, that means your stomach, guts coming out of you, griping in the guts, accidental killing, dropsy, cough, convulsion, consumption, aged 19 people with apoplexy. Each week they would list the causes of death. This is the famous lift from Selfridges in 1928, when Selfridges was the most glamorous department store in London. It was full of novelties, uniformed women used to operate in the lift. And I'm here because it's the final day of the Museum of London before it closes for 3 years. I'm here celebrating all the happy times I've had here, looking at the remarkable things that I collected here. I hope that some of them will be put back again when the museum reopens in Smithfield in about 3 years, but let's just celebrate the beautiful lift that used to be in Selfridges from 1928 onwards. What a fabulous piece of artwork this is. How exciting it must have been to ride in this lift with the uniformed women operators. And where's the buttons? Oh, I can't see them, must be on the door. Anyone remember this guy? His name was Stanley Green. He used to walk up and down Oxford Street all day long with this, handing out these sort of leaflets all about his passion proteins. This is a bit about his life. I used to come to London and see him all the time. I'm in here in the Museum of London. It's the final day, closing tomorrow. I'm just celebrating all the happy hours I've spent discovering things from my tours here. And goodbye to all this for 3 years, hopefully reopening in 2025 in Smithfield Market. But it's an all-nighter tonight. They're playing the Long Good Friday round the corner, which my friend Becca's father directed, John Mackenzie, and I'm here to have fun. So when I first moved to London in 1992 for a job in Hackney, I lived over the road from this street, Ellingford Street, near London Fields. And this little model's been put together to recreate what life was like there at that time. All squats. Nowadays it's far from this. It's a very upmarket, chic, expensive area. But that's what it was like in 94, I think, when this model was made. And it's really well done, as you can see. There's a little bit of political commentary just around the corner over here. The less said about that, the better. Plus ça change, some might think, Ellingford Road. But this is a fantastic model. I'm here on the final night of the Museum of London, night of the museum, before it shuts for at least 3 years. I'm just looking around the various items that are on display here. So this is all that's left of what would have been a Grade 1 listed building. It is an original post-fire of London Christopher Wren Church, St Olave's Jury, built in the late 17th century. And in Victorian times, the railways meant that people no longer lived in the city like they used to. The congregations dwindled to virtually nothing in many cases. So an act was created called the Union of Benefices in the 1880s. It allowed the city to sell off these churches. They were auctioned in many cases destroyed. In this case, just the tower remains, the spire, and became differently used. And that's why this is no longer a Christopher Wren church. Ironically, it has now been converted to accommodation. There is a house flat inside here now, instead of it being a church or an office. Change of use, city rezoning, etc., etc. I don't remember how much it cost. I think it was about £1.2 million, sold a couple of years ago. But the city, Phoenix-like, keeps changing its usage throughout time. It's just a shame sometimes that the Christopher Wren churches are the ones that get lost. When the Great Fire of London happened in 1666, people wanted to rebuild it on geometric lines. This is the plan that Christopher Wren himself came up with to create a logical, rational, bit like Paris boulevards lineup. Unfortunately, the fire meant that no plans were left of people's houses. And no sooner had the fire died down than people were out with pegs and bits of string trying to plot where their houses had been. It took 24 fire judges to sit and make sure that people could legitimately claim which plots of land were theirs to allow London to be rebuilt. And sadly, they couldn't do it on the geometric lines. They had to just do it on the old streets, or good for us because we've got the medieval layout still. This judge is Hugh Wyndham, and as a reward for sitting without pay, they were each made a portrait in 1670. And this is the one that belongs to Hugh Wyndham, one of the fire judges. Now, the portraits were put into the Guildhall, and in this painting from 1782, you can see them all dotted around the perimeter of the interior of the Guildhall. This painting depicts what's called the silent ceremony, where each year the old Lord Mayor hands over his mace, sword, and chain of office to the new Lord Mayor, who's just coming into sight. This painting was itself commissioned by a man called John Boydell, who went on to become Lord Mayor 8 years later. There he is. Famously, he created a profession of engravers and made lots of money, lost it all sadly, but he did the profession a great service. This is the Guildhall Art Gallery basement. Over in that area is the entrance to the Roman amphitheatre, which I'll talk about at a later date. But these two paintings show a painting within a painting. So forget about your Pret, your Starbucks, your Costa. This is where it all began 370 years ago. Around the edge somewhere of this churchyard of St Michael Cornhill, a young Smyrnan merchant called Pasquale Rosé set up a tiny little stall against the edge of the churchyard. But this stall changed the world. It became the very first in the country coffee house. Now, coffee houses were so important to the history of this country because they allowed people to get together, formerly repressed under Charles I, without being drunk, to take on discussions of anything: trade, commerce, intellectual pursuits, academic studies, astrology, astronomy, scientific endeavour. Everything was enabled by the coffee houses, so much so they were known as penny universities. And it all started on this spot. So, this is a love letter. This is grief. This is our Taj Mahal. Let me explain. These two stone relics come from a cross that was one of 12 that was put up by a king in the memory of his dead wife of 36 years marriage. They had married at 15. It was a love match. They had 15 children. When she died, he was so stricken with grief that her funeral carriage stopped at 12 spots on the way back from the north of England, ending up in Westminster. At each point, he erected a cross, a stone cross, to celebrate her life. This is one of them. This particular one was erected in the middle of the city of London, not that far away from where we are now. But let me set the time. This is in the late 13th century. The king is Edward I, and his wife is Eleanor of Castile. It was a dynastic marriage in the sense that it was different sovereign countries attempting to align themselves with each other, which often happened. Even nowadays, our own royal family have got different countries, backgrounds to them as well, very common feature. However, in this case, if you look closely at this, you'll see that it celebrates the two different royal families. So on your left, we have here the three lions, which most of you will recognise from the English football team's shirts. That is the symbol of England. The actual concept of the three lions themselves for use in royal heraldry had only been around for about 100 years before Edward I himself. It was Richard, King Richard, had actually created the concept of the three lions. And on the other side here, we have the royal crest of the family of Castile, which is where Eleanor came from in Spain. It itself was composed of two different families. So we have the castle of Castile, and we have the lion of the Leon. So Castile-Leon were two different provinces in Spain, that had been united. So Edward I, a very interesting man. He was nicknamed Longshanks because he was actually 6 feet too tall, very, very tall for his time. He was born the son of King Henry III. Henry III had a very difficult reign towards the end of it. He'd had significant trouble with the barons, in particular with a man called Simon de Montfort, after him de Montfort University, in Leicester's name, who had tried to establish a concept of more representative rule distributed across not just the royalty but also the barons as well. He actually rebelled against the king and led many other barons. Actually, King Henry had been captured, as had Edward I as well for a short period of time, was eventually released. Edward actually escaped. He was on remand, as it were. He was allowed out with a small group of soldiers to accompany him. But one day he ran a group of horses that he claimed to be testing into the ground, apart from one. He jumped on that one horse, then he escaped. And he eventually led a rebellion that destroyed Simon de Montfort, killed him brutally, and ruled with his wife, Eleanor. Now, the remainder of his reign after she died was mostly about destroying the Welsh and their empire in the north of Wales in particular. But the crosses, let's go back to the crosses. This particular section of cross was found in 1838 in the sewers that would be built in Cheapside. The Cheapside Cross was roughly halfway between St Paul's Cathedral and now the Bank of England. And it had been noted by the Puritans as a symbol of paganism almost. They associated it with the devil Dagon, I think it was, and there were lots of attempts, especially in the 17th century, to destroy it. They were eventually successful. One broadside poem was released lamenting the cross, talking itself, saying, I'm being attacked, etc., etc. It was destroyed and found in the sewers. But the final resting point is in Westminster itself. Of course, I must mention Westminster. This is a Westminster Guides course. It's in the centre of London, where the statue of King Charles II is now. It was destroyed again. The Victorians rebuilt it. They're outside Charing Cross Station. If you look at the Charing Cross Station version, it also has on 3 of the 6 faces the 3 lions and the Castile symbol. Thank you very much. This is a hanged cat. It's put up in Cheapside near St Paul's Cathedral in 1554 by Protestants as an act of defiance against Queen Mary Tudor, or Bloody Mary as she was called. She had executed 100 or so, 170 or so Protestants when she became the Queen, after her extreme Protestant brother Edward VI died. And this was a real cat that was hung up in Cheapside at the gallows that she had erected, as I said, as a sign of protest against what she'd been doing to the Protestants. Poor pussycat. And I've just noticed this rather wonderful fireplace, which, as you can see, has been marked by the estates to avoid it being nicked and not identifiable. And I've looked at the details inside the fireplace. I see these rather remarkable sphinxes here, both in front view and from the side. And I've also noticed the ceiling here, the moulding, also has sphinxes on it as well. but they are quite different from each other. So I'm wondering whether the moulded ceilings here, perhaps a little bit later. This building dates from the 1770s in Harley Street. And if you look closely at the Sphinx here, for example, look at the wing at the back, right raising up, and also the hairstyle with a sort of almost like a pharaonic headdress on it. And you compare that to the ones up here. The wings are behind their back. There's no hair curling down in front of them, and they've got like a lamp above them as well. So I have to look into this more detail, but essentially look out for the details. You can often find things that surprise you here. 7 men survived their ship being sunk in 1940 and were left in this raft. They lasted 70 days before being found, and one by one, 5 of them had died. They cut deep marks into the side of it to mark off the days that they were trapped in here. And the 2 men who were left alive at the end, Roy Widdicombe and Bob Tapscott. Roy was then sunk himself and drowned in 1941, and Bob killed himself in 1963. Imagine being stuck on this raft for 70 days. So the biggest single loss of life in City of London police history happened just here on the 16th of December 1910. The policemen were named Tucker, Bentley and Choate, and they were murdered in cold blood by a gang of Latvian anarchist communist revolutionaries, Jewish, who had fled from Russia following the assassination of the Tsar, and they were reported directly to the Russian leadership, Lenin, and at the time. Expropriation is what they were dealing with, stealing money and sending it back to Russia to fund revolutionary activities. 1910, well before the Russian Revolution. They believed this was a jeweller's at the time. They believed it contained some of the Tsar's gold, allegedly. They broke in just before Christmas at the rear because it was the Sabbath. The Jewish neighbours were alerted by the noises and called the police. Police came and 3 of them were shot dead just here. The anarchists escaped, the communists rather, not anarchists, escaped and went down to Sydney Street. That became the infamous siege of Sydney Street, which Winston Churchill got involved in. But this is where it all happened. One of them, Jacob Peters, one of the leaders, was escaped, went back to Russia and eventually became head of the Cheka before himself being the victim of Stalin's purges in the 1920s. And what we have here is the Gherkin in the far distance, just the top of it peeking up above the head. Anyway, this is where the biggest single loss of life in any individual city police murders took place, December the 16th, 1910. Imagine in this cold weather the River Thames being so icy that it freezes all the way over. Unimaginable now? Well, it used to happen. You wouldn't like it, Frankie, would you? This is a picture of it from 1683. Out the way, Frankie. 1683. You can see that. Oh, get your paw off the ancient document, Frankie. This is a picture from 1683, the final year of the reign of King Charles II. You can see in the distance here the London Bridge, old London Bridge, with its 19 piers. That's the monument, by the way, from the Great Fire. 19 piers. It was because the bridge was so constricted that the river used to freeze up. The water flowed so slowly under it that it used to happen. But since the bridge was replaced in the 1830s, there hasn't been one since, and probably never will be one too, unless we get a new ice age. So what's here? We've got booths set up here, people running sort of ski sleds, boats on wheels, people slipping over, dogs and animals. There was a printing press somewhere here. There's apparently, according to this key, there are some boys climbing up the tree in the temple area to watch the bull baiting going on. You've got toy shops, a bear garden, you've got boat draws. Anyway, this is an exciting picture showing what it used to be like on the River Thames. People used to die. When the ice broke up, they would fall in and drown, etc. So it was a very dangerous time. But anyway, this is what London used to be like. Happened lots of different times. The last one was in 1814. And an episode of Doctor Who actually includes that in it. Okay, thank you from me and Frankie. So I want to invite you. Are you recording?
I am.
Hello. Okay. Let's look at everyone else as well. These are my colleagues and guests on my tour today. We are all part of the Deutsche Bank team, looking at events management. Yeah, don't say anything more. Marketing. Right, anyway, we're back in the room. We are in Masons Avenue in the City of London. We are looking at the old Dr. Butler's Head, a really interesting pub, which some of you may have spent some time in. It's a lovely place to drink at. It's got an interesting history. Look at the sign. Dr. Butler, Dr. William Butler. Now there's a Latin inscription around his head here, which says, in English, it says, because I've got a degree in Latin, it says, William Butler of Cambridge, the foremost medic of his time. Gulielmus Butler, Cantabrian Huis Aetatis Princeps Medicorum. There we go. Now, he was a doctor at the time of King James I, who had succeeded Queen Elizabeth at the end of the 16th century. Yes. And he suffered from a bad back. So luckily, Dr. Butler wasn't a very good doctor, to be honest, but he managed to cure King James's backache, and he therefore became popular within the royal circle. Now, he made extra money as well through a chain of inns and taverns that he created, selling his special medicine that he created at the time. And his medicine was, I've got a picture of it here somewhere. Apologies for the delay here. Where's it gone? Okay, here it is. So this is Dr. Butler. This is his image, the same one that we see on the pub sign as well. But this is his special ale that he licensed and sold and made his fortune from. It's called his purging ale. And it was designed as a medical treatment. Basically, all the ingredients of it, which include things like aniseed, sarsaparilla, caraway seeds, licorice, maidenhair, agrimony, sarsaparilla. If you would have it more purging, increase or double the proportion of cenopods. So as you might guess, it had an incredibly emetic effect on your guts. It was designed to basically make you explode on the toilet as soon as you'd taken it. And it became so...
ingredient of maidenhair in there?
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure quite what that is. I think it's a type of grass. Let's leave it there, shall we? Anyway, so he made a fortune selling his licensed Dr. Butler's Purging Ale. And this is the only pub that remains with his name on it. No, unfortunately, I have shown this menu to the pub, and they want to take a copy of it to put up in the pub background, so we're going to give them a copy to have anyway. But he also then, as he was a doctor to King James I. Now, James I had two sons. His first son, Henry Frederick, the older son, was a perfect king material. He was handsome, he was athletic, intelligent, learned in scholars, in military matters, very popular as well. Sadly, he died at the age of 18 of a suspected poisoning. Now, I'm just guessing here, but perhaps if Dr. Butler had actually been a bit better, not just selling his purging ale, we may well have had him succeed James I as the following king, instead of his younger brother, Charles I. Now, Charles I was one of the worst kings we'd ever had. He fell out with Parliament. He argued about taxation, about the right to rule, the divine monarchy, etc. And he ended up having his head chopped off by Parliament in 1649, so unpopular. And that was the end of the monarchy for 11 years. So perhaps if Dr. Butler had been a bit better doctor, the course of English history might have been changed. Thank you very much. Royal Exchange, and there's a golden grasshopper hidden in this building somewhere. It's because the guy who created this building, the original version in the 1570s for Queen Elizabeth, his name was John Gresham, and the family sign of his Norfolk name was a grasshopper. Gresham means a grasshopper, and he wanted to call this the Gresham Exchange, but when she turned up metaphorically with a pair of scissors to cut the silk bow to open it, Queen Elizabeth I declared this should be the Royal Exchange. However, Mr. Gresham got his own back, because if you look very closely up here, right in the distance above the entrance, and there's another on the other side which less easy to see, there is indeed still a golden grasshopper celebrating his family name. This grasshopper represents him, and this one actually is the same one that was here after this building burnt down in the Great Fire of London. It burnt down again in the 1830s, so this is the third Royal Exchange on the site, but the one up here, the grasshopper, dates from the 1660s. I'm in Apothecaries Hall, one of the great livery companies of the City of London. Apothecaries deal with medicine, doctors. Amongst their treasures, I've noticed this amazing painting attributed to Nicholas Hilliard, the famous miniature painter of the Battle of the Armada in 1588. Fabulous treasure here. But a fascinating little thing I found here is that doctors, royal doctors, often attended the death of kings. And we have over here, in this cabinet corner, a handkerchief. And the handkerchief sign at the bottom says it was appropriated, or like stolen, by a Dr. Nussey from the deathbed in 1830 of King George IV himself. And it's been donated to the hall. No, we're not in Starbucks, despite the mermaid's appearance. This is not a Starbucks mermaid. This is, in fact, dated 1669. This is the Mercer's Maid. She is the symbol of the most important, the number one ancient livery company in the City of London. What are the liveries then? Well, they control trade. They're the ancient guilds. The earliest one with the Royal Charter is from 1155, the Weavers. Mercers are number one because they dealt with, well, the word mercer comes from the Latin word mercator, which means trader. But in fact, they really dealt with wool. Wool being a huge wealth export commodity from Britain in medieval times. If you know about the wool sack in Parliament, in front of it, that's demonstrating the value of wool to the nation. And they own buildings all over the City of London. They were created number one company, and they own a lot of streets in Covent Garden, for example. But this is, if you see her or her symbol on a building in London, that means it is owned by the number one ancient trade guild, the Mercers Company. And here's a bit more about it for you to read. After the Great Fire of London, people were very quick to blame the usual suspects. This Latin inscription on this north face of the monument explains what happened to the fire. I won't go into the details, but you notice at the very bottom of it there's a line which has been removed. This was put here and not removed until 1830, and the line, extra line, revealing hatred of Catholics said, but popish frenzy which wrought such horrors is not yet quenched. This monument is not just a monument to the Great Fire of London, therefore, it's a monument to religious intolerance and prejudice. And there you go. Did you know that geese can fall in love? Well, this famous market, Leadenhall Market, was a famous goose market. In one day, 34,000 geese were sold and slaughtered here in the 19th century. But there is a story about one of the geese, Old Tom, who escaped, and he has been immortalised here in Old Tom's tale. So what happened was, he was born in Belgium, and he was devastated when his girlfriend at the time, he discovered that she was due to be taken and sold in a market in England. This is him meeting her for the first time. He decided to follow. He had an intense fear of flying, but he refused to be left behind and followed her on a merchant ship bound for London. He realised that they were due to be slaughtered in Leadenhall Market, and he overcame his fear of flying, as you can see, and flew away, escaping the nasty butcher's knife. He was finally, after daring escapes, became the mascot of Leadenhall Market, and as you can see here, finally, he lived here to the age of 38. He gained the affection of his local traders, and upon his death, he was buried somewhere underneath the market. Sadly, the story doesn't say anything about what happened to his girlfriend, but you can't have everything, can you? The tale of Old Tom. I'm in the Guards Chapel. I'm looking at the Welsh Guards memorial, and this window here has all the elements of Wales in it. We have a daffodil with a view of St David's Cathedral, the regimental leek underneath it. We also have next to it mountains, both bare and wooded. Also we have slag heaps and a coal mine. We have then a 10B daffodil, and inside it a view of Harlech Castle, and then finally an oak tree with a symbol of the Welsh triple harp representing ancient and bardic Wales. I myself am Welsh from my father's side, so this is a very fitting memorial to my father's family connections to Wales as embodied within the Welsh Regiment, one of the 5 regiments of foot guards here at the Guards Chapel, just by Wellington Barracks, just next to Birdcage Walk. So this is the remains of the most elaborately equipped Iron Age warrior to have been found in England, found in 2008, and it's now in the Chichester Museum. So this is what his helmet looks like now, and it had 2 very elaborate side pieces hanging off it, open work crests. This is his body, and they've managed to recreate what they think his helmet looked like. Look at this, what an amazing piece of Iron Age metalwork. Imagine seeing this in front of you in battle coming towards you. It must have been very, very scary. And here is a reconstruction of, they call him the Mystery Warrior. We've also got here vessels that were found with him, along with his sword that's been bent in two, violently killed, as they called it here. You can read this. And it's an amazing find here in Chichester. Look at this. It's a castrating tool, also known as a emasculator. I'm trying to work out what actually happened. If you open it up, you put your thing that sticks out here, and you close this and cut off your testicles, I assume. Quite horrific to imagine. There's a mistake in this window. Can you tell what it is? Where are we? We are in Stationers' Hall, one of the ancient livery companies in the City of London that I'm a member of because I have been a printer for many years. The hall, from just after the Great Fire of London, was rebuilt, and the company themselves had their first charter in 1403, and they're all about printing, and nowadays journalism, paper, etc., etc. But this is William Caxton, who in the 1470s brought printing to this country, and this is his printing press in Westminster, and you can see he's holding up a piece of paper he's just printed. But the thing about it is, if you look at the printing press, it is, how can I say, anatomically incorrect. The lever that comes out is meant to go all the way around, but instead it gets stuck by the pillars on each side of it, which means that it actually is not a correct piece of technology, which is a bit of a shame. These are the remains of a midget submarine called the X7, used in 1943 to destroy the German cruiser, the Tirpitz, or to attack it at least. There were 4 members of it. 2 of them drowned. But the captain of the boat survived, Godfrey Place, and he was awarded a Victoria Cross for his bravery in the attack. Just imagine being stuck on board this, 4 people, in an incredibly brave and daring exploit. Courage, endurance, and utter contempt for danger were the citations for Godfrey Place's Victoria Cross. So I'm just here for Christmas service. We've just finished. I've noticed this wonderful tomb here, dedicated to the body of Thomas Clement Clark, who deceased the 18th of June 1675. And look at this. If you inquire who lies within this frame of one much more clement by his life than his name, a painful pastor that did with Christ did gather, a loving husband and a tender father, and his name is a bit missing, but it was Thomas Clement. What a wonderful and very ancient memorial in this church here in Chilfrome. Hello, I'm David, and I'm here to talk about divine retribution and one of the most important inventions in the history of the world. It was on this very spot next to Westminster Abbey that William Caxton in 1476 first set up his original printing press, and I have in my hands here an original page printed by him in 1482 in English on this very site about, it's a book called the Polychronicon by a man called Ranulph Higden, and this is about Julian, the apostate emperor, the emperor who was raised a Christian but converted back to paganism. And in this book it says, for example, also at Antioch he gathered together the holy vessels and the wares of the altar, and he smirched them with the filth of his arse, and anon worms sprang out thereof, and freight so him for that he was alive, for that he was alive. Also his steward pissed upon vessels of the church, and said, Lo, in what vessels Mary's son is served? And anon his mouth became his arse, and served afterwards instead of his nether end. Horrific story from about the year 364, but this paper, which I'm holding in my hand, was printed in 1482 on this very site. Come on one of my Roman London tours and you might get the chance to handle this. It is a genuine Roman coin from the reign of the Emperor Constantine, who happened to be the first ever Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. This coin was made in about the year 311, which is when the year he actually converted. However, it says on the front of it, Constantius, P.F. Augustus, which means Constantine, obviously, P. Pius, holy, F. Felix, and Augustus, or August. Right, turn it over. And on the other side, you have the ancient Roman god of the sun, Sol, as it says here, Invicto, Comiti, which means unconquered son, a minister or aide to the emperor. So although he converted to Christianity about this time, this actually was still a Roman god that he was worshipping on the coins. S.F., which stands for, we believe, Saeculi Felicitas, which means happy days. And finally, at the very, very bottom of the coin, P.L.N., which stands for, we believe, Percussus Londinia, or struck in London, because this coin, not only do I show it on my London tours, but it was actually minted in London. Now, unfortunately, I gave it to one little boy on a tour and he dropped it. This is a genuine World War II SOE, Special Operations Executive map, that will be given to operatives who had been parachuted into enemy-occupied territory as volunteers working for the British forces. And it belongs to my brother-in-law. It was owned by his father, John Hay Kirkpatrick Shaw. And he gave it to him after the war, apparently. He's just lent it to me to show, and I'm absolutely astonished. It's genuine silk, printed, and it could often be so thin that it would be put inside the linings of clothing of people who were sent, so it could be hidden if they were arrested. But it shows major journey routes and railway, I suppose, and main boating links. This is Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria. So this is a genuine World War II SOE map. Welcome to ancient Leadenhall Market and its connections to Tom, Dick and Harry. So Tom was a goose that escaped its pen. 34,000 geese were once sold market here in one day. It wasn't chopped, but it was made the mascot of the market. It lived to the ripe old age of 38 years old and was buried somewhere under the flagstone. So that's Tom. Dick, well, Dick Whittington, the famous pantomime hero, Lord Mayor of London 4 times, died in the early 15th century. He gave his money to make the original market here with its leaden roof. This new market dates from 1881. And finally, Harry. This is a famous scene from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, where Hagrid, R.I.P. poor Hagrid, walks Harry down this cobbled road saying, you need to get some money from Gringotts Bank and buy stuff in Diagon Alley. And they walk down here in the film, turn the second corner up ahead by those lights. Around the corner there is the entrance to the Leaky Cauldron. So that's why we have in this very market, this beautiful market, day before New Year's Day, Eve, Tom, Dick and Harry. Hello, I'm here in the City of London, London Wall. I'm here to show you another bizarre secret hidden here. So through this doorway, down these steps, and I'm going to run again. Apologies if I make you feel sick, but I don't know how to speed up the video otherwise. Into the, yes, it's an underground car park, which is not that interesting in itself, but go into the car park, run. Right over here, bay number 63, right over here, bay number 54 even. And we have preserved here, bizarrely, a section of the original 1800-year-old Roman wall that used to be around the edge of the City of London. Look how big the car park is. And this is the Roman wall. Absolutely incredible, preserved here in Bay 52 of the car park. This is, I think, the most beautiful book I own, and it's a book hidden within a book. So it's a first edition. Tom Phillips, he found a book called A Human Document, written in Victorian times, and he treated it to create an entirely new text by filling in the pages. So it says here, a human document, introduction, the following I sing, a book of art, of mind art, and that which he hid reveal I. So the hero of the book is a man called Toge, which is spelt from together or all together. And every single page in the book, he has basically highlighted certain words using his art, and it makes an entirely new text. It's absolutely wonderful. Every single page is a work of art in it. Here, chapter 1. Enter Toge, wheeled slowly in by French and German ladies of vague conditions in life, etc., etc. Now, Tom Phillips, the artist, used to live around the corner from me, and my friend knew him, gave him this book to sign for me, which he did. Unfortunately, he wrote, with very best wishes, Tom Phillips, P.S., get the latest edition now. It's much better, because he continued to revise this throughout his life. I think 2016 was the final version. However, I'm still incredibly proud to have this first edition of this absolutely wonderful work of art, a hidden book within a book, a human. I'm David Harry, I am the London Spy. This is London, and please follow me if you like the videos, click on the links to follow my TikTok, and come and see me at one of my tours.